Okay, question 25 says Linda recorded the temperature in degrees centigrade at 9 a.m. on each of the 30 days. The table shows information about the results. Calculate an estimate for the mean temperature. And now you can see I've already done this question, but if I was to explain this as I went along, what I did to begin with is on 3 of the days, the temperature was between 10 and 12. And I just found the midpoint of those two just so we can find the mean here. So the midpoint of 10 and 12 is 11. The midpoint of 12 and 14 is 13. Of 14 and 16 is 15. 16 to 18 is 17. And 18 to 20 is 19. So I just basically changed this column for the midpoints now. So on 11 days... on 3 days the temperature was 11, so that takes us to 33 degrees. On 8 days it was 13, so 8 times 13 is 104. Then I did 14 times 15 to give me 210. 4 times by 17 to give me 68. 1 times 19 to give me 19. So that was the midpoint times by the number of days. The next thing I did was add all of those together. So when you're finding the mean, remember mean is add then divide. So add all of those totals together, and that took me to 434. Now my next step here is divide. So divide by however many days there were. So there were 30 days. So I'm going to do 434 divided by 30, and there is no point in trying to work that out in my head. I've got a calculator and I can rely on that. So 434 divided by 30 gives me 14.466. It asks for it to 1 decimal place, so I'm just going to write 14.466 and so on, just so I can get my working mark for that. So it now says I have to round that, so 14.466 to 1 decimal place. I'm looking at this number. This is where I want to stop. So I have to look next door. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, leave the mess. It's more than 5. So that means I have to bump this number up by 1, which becomes 14.5. My answer is 14.5. First mark here comes from doing the midpoint times by the number of days. So that's number 1. And adding them together. The second mark comes from dividing that by 30. Third mark comes from guessing your correct answer. You actually would have still got that last mark for having 14.4 or 14.5. Okay, question 26. The diagram shows a square ABCD of sides 8 centimetres inside the circle. The vertices of the square lie on the circle. Work out the total area of the 4 shaded segments. Again, I've started this one, but basically what I've seen here is just this right angle triangle, and if I was to draw that outside of the shape, it would just look like this. And I know that Pythagoras says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this length here, add this length here, equals this length here squared. Now this length is actually the radius of the circle. So the radius squared plus this radius squared equals this length squared. So that equals 8 squared. So 2 lots of the radius squared equals, 8 squared is 64. So the radius squared equals, if I divide both sides by 2, it equals 32. And that actually equals around 5.6 if you do that on your calculator. And you could take it to that right now. So my next step, so there's my step 1. I'm actually going to underline that, show that step's over, just to make sure that I'm showing my answers nice and clearly. I'm going to find the area of that circle. Now I know that the radius, no, I've done that wrong. So r equals 5.6, the square root, sorry. Now the radius is 5.6, that circle. So to find the area of the circle, I'm going to do pi times the radius squared is the area. So pi on my calculator times by 32 or 5.6 squared, it's up to you. So pi times by 5.6 squared equals 98.52 Okay, and that's my area of the circle. Now, I need to find the area of the square. So the area of the square, I know the length of the square is 8. This length must also be 8. So the area of the square equals 8 times 8, which is 64. And that's the area of the square. So, if I can do the area of the circle, that whole circle is 98.52, and I take away the area of that square, that's going to leave me with the total area altogether, the area of the shaded bits altogether. So 98.52 take away 64 equals 34.52.